1,800 kilometers. That is the distance Ukrainian drones traveled to strike the industrial heart of Russia, shattering a security doctrine that has stood for 80 years. The Kremlin's myth of invincibility was never truly about its missiles or tanks. Its ultimate shield was the vast, empty expanse on the map: distance. Vladimir Putin placed immense faith in this geography, hiding his war machine's most vital organs, heavy industry, metallurgical centers, and pilot academies, deep in the shadow of the Ural Mountains, a barrier he considered impassable. It was a strategy inherited from World War II, when Stalin relocated the nation's production lines eastward, saving them from the Nazi advance. Since that time, Moscow has viewed these mountains as an impregnable fortress, protecting the furnaces that cast tank armor, the facilities that produce rocket components, and the schools that train pilots to deliver destruction to the front lines. Russia believed no enemy on Earth could penetrate so deep. That sanctuary, however, was about to become the epicenter of a strategic nightmare, one that would collapse the foundations of Russia's tactical planning. The 80-year-old assumption of safety was set to be dismantled on the night of April 25, 2026. On that night, Ukrainian drones reached the Urals for the first time. A swarm of Lutyj drones flew over 1,800 kilometers from the border, remaining inside Russian airspace for more than 10 hours. Air defense systems failed to stop them. The long-held Russian belief that distance equals safety was definitively broken. This 10-hour unintercepted flight is strategically more significant than the final impact. It demonstrates a failure not just of point defense systems at the target, but a systemic collapse of Russia's entire early warning and long-range interdiction network. This suggests a level of airspace porosity that was previously thought impossible for a major military power. Commander Maguire of the Ukrainian Unmanned Systems Forces summarized the new reality. A depth of 1,500 to 2,000 kilometers is no longer a peaceful rear area. He stated, "We are exceeding our plan to eliminate Russian forces," and the targets struck that night were proof of his words. Two critical facilities in Chelyabinsk were hit directly. The first was the Chelyabinsk Metallurgical Plant, one of Russia's largest private steel producers. It is here that critical raw materials are produced for tank armor, armored vehicle hulls, missile parts, and rocket components. This facility, the backbone of Russian defense production since the Second World War, had been operating continuously for 80 years. Following explosions and fires, production has now halted. It is estimated that production lines will be disrupted for at least several weeks, potentially several months. This will have a direct impact on the front lines, slowing Russia's tank repairs, armored vehicle production, and missile component supply. The second target was even more strategic: the Chelyabinsk Higher Military Aviation Navigation School. This academy trains the pilots and navigators who conduct Russian airstrikes on Ukrainian cities. At least 2 direct hits were recorded on the school grounds. The target selection was not a coincidence. It was calculated and deliberate. An attack on a training facility does not just damage today's buildings. It disrupts all future operations. Training new pilots takes years, a timeline that cannot be compressed. By striking the school, Ukraine targeted Russia's future capacity. This two-pronged strategy in Chelyabinsk and Yekaterinburg strikes Russia's present and its future simultaneously. In Yekaterinburg, however, a different incident occurred. Russian electronic warfare systems successfully misdirected a drone, but it crashed into a residential building, the Trinity apartment complex, causing damage. Another target in the city was the JSC Vector state enterprise. This facility is a critical center of Russia's defense industry, producing missile guidance systems and military radars. The eyes of air defense systems like the S-400, the guidance electronics that allow ballistic missiles to find their targets, and the avionics components for fighter jets are all produced here. The strike on Vector carries a significance far beyond a routine factory attack. Russia is already facing severe difficulties in producing sensitive military electronics due to sanctions. It cannot source microchips and advanced components from the West. Its domestic production capacity is limited, and Chinese alternatives have persistent quality issues. Under these conditions, damage to a facility like Vector creates a gap in Russia's missile and radar production chain that will be extremely difficult to repair. Steel production, pilot training, and now missile electronics. In a single night, Ukraine struck 3 different critical links in Russia's war machine. The question is how. The attack was carried out using Ukraine's Lutyj long-range kamikaze drones. Co-produced by Ukroboronprom and Antonov, these drones are sometimes called Ukraine's domestic Shahed, but their capabilities far exceed the Iranian model. It is a platform measuring 4.4 meters in length, with a wingspan of 6.7 meters, capable of carrying a 75-kilogram explosive warhead over a range of up to 2,000 kilometers. Its cost is approximately $200,000. The $200,000 price point is the key to this entire strategy. It creates a severe cost asymmetry, where a relatively inexpensive, expendable drone can force a nation to defend every square kilometer of its territory with multi-billion-dollar air defense systems. This economic warfare is as damaging as the physical destruction of the targets themselves. The Lutyj's maximum speed is approximately 250 kilometers per hour, making it a turtle next to a fighter jet. Its propeller-driven engine is noisy and leaves a distinct thermal signature. On paper, it appears to be an easy target. The answer to its success lies in its navigation system. The drone is not reliant on traditional radio signals. It uses a hybrid system combining inertial navigation, satellite guidance, and AI-supported autonomous flight. Even if Russian electronic warfare jams its signal, the drone can automatically reroute and reach its target. It completes its mission even if communication with its operator is lost. Flying at low altitudes, it significantly reduces the detection range of Russian radars. It can maneuver between trees, buildings, and hills, advancing undetected. The Lutyj also employs deceptive tactics. While some drones fly high to draw attention, the actual attack drones proceed to the target at low altitude. This multi-layered approach confounds Russia's defensive calculations. But another question is just as important. Why couldn't anyone stop drones that flew in Russian airspace for 10 hours? The Lutyj's technical superiority is one factor, but the real problem is structural. The Ural Mountains were traditionally considered Russia's secure rear. For this reason, dense air defense batteries were never deployed to the region. S-400s, Pantsers, and radar networks were concentrated along the front lines and around Moscow. Putin had left a massive defensive gap deep within his own territory, and he had not noticed it. Ukraine did, and flew its drones right through the middle of that gap. The crash at the residential building in Yekaterinburg is the most painful proof of this failure. Russian defenses could neither shoot down the drone nor intercept it safely. The defense system failed to stop the threat, and its attempt to intervene caused collateral damage. Even Russian military bloggers could not hide their disappointment. No significant air defense activity was observed during the 10-hour flight, they wrote. The question, where was the air defense, spread rapidly. Even propaganda channels most loyal to the Kremlin were forced to ask it, because the shame of not being able to answer outweighed the silence. This question will not go away easily. It points not to a single failure, but to a structural collapse in Russia's entire concept of deep defense. The Ural raid is a dramatic operation in itself, but in context, it is the final link in a much larger campaign. Ukraine's Lutyj drones have been reaching deep into Russian territory for months, their range increasing with each attack. They have been testing Russia's defensive boundaries, pushing further with every attempt. In November 2025, the first major Lutyj attack was launched against the Saratov refinery. Before repairs could be completed, it was struck again in January 2026. In February, the UK refinery in the Komi Republic, 1,700 kilometers away, was targeted. In March, the Kuibyshev chemical plant in Samara and the Tolyatti refinery were attacked. And in April, the range extended to 1,800 kilometers. With each operation, another region Russia considered safe comes under threat. This is not just about range. Target selection is also becoming more strategic. Initial attacks focused on oil refineries to drain Russia's revenue. Now, metallurgical plants and military training centers are in the crosshairs. Ukraine is striking Russia's finances and its production capacity simultaneously. Just days before the Ural raid, on April 22nd, Rosneft's Tuapse and Novokuybishevsk oil refineries were forced to shut down due to coordinated drone attacks. The Tuapse facility, with an annual processing capacity of 12 million metric tons, was struck twice in less than a week. Local observers described it as a man-made disaster. The Yanos refinery in Yaroslavl was also set ablaze during the same period. Located 800 kilometers from the front lines, this facility is Russia's fourth largest refinery, accounting for 6% of the country's total refining capacity. Its daily capacity of 500,000 barrels was taken offline by a single drone attack. On the night of April 26th, Sevastopol was struck by attack drones approaching at ultra-low altitude, causing fires across the city. Although the occupation governor claimed 45 drones were shot down, fire records indicate many reached their targets. In the same operations, radar stations within an S-400 system and a Tor M1 air defense system in Luhansk were destroyed. Command centers, ammunition depots, and drone control centers in Lysichansk, Svatov, Troitske, Novopskov, and Teplohursk inside Russia were also struck. All of these are part of the same campaign, and its logic is clear. Instead of fighting on the front lines, cripple the systems that sustain the front. By targeting command centers, ammunition depots, energy infrastructure, training facilities, and production lines, Ukraine is cutting off the power to Russia's war machine. The effects on Russia are multi-layered. Economically, the Ural offensive struck the backbone of the war economy. Disruption at the Chelyabinsk Metallurgical Plant directly affects the supply chain for tank armor, missile bodies, and armored vehicle parts. When that link breaks, the entire chain slows. The systematic targeting of oil refineries further restricts Russia's energy revenues, already shrinking under sanctions. Russia has already lost 20% of its export capacity. Every refinery hit increases that percentage. Militarily, the strike on the Chelyabinsk Aviation School directly damaged the training infrastructure for Russian air operations. A new factory can be operational in months. Training a new pilot takes years. Less trained crews mean more errors and less effective air operations. Politically, this attack has driven the perception that no place is safe deep into the Russian psyche. The war was something that happened far from the Urals. Now drone threat protocols have been activated across the region. Flights were restricted at airports in Perm, Chelyabinsk, and Tobolsk. For the first time, a cover-up plan was implemented in the Kirov region. Drone alarms sounded as people headed to work. Schools were temporarily closed. Millions of people who had watched the war on television now felt it had physically arrived at their doorsteps. The incident at the residential building in Yekaterinburg made this fear tangible. War is no longer a distant screen image, but a reality crashing into their own buildings. Even the Kremlin's most loyal Z-bloggers openly criticize the failure. Such internal criticism may be more dangerous for Putin than drone damage. When the security narrative collapses, public support for the war begins to crumble. This psychological impact may be the most lasting. Serhiy Sternenko, an advisor to the Ukrainian defense minister, summed it up in a single sentence. This is not the end. Can Putin compensate for these attacks? In the short term, partially. He can redeploy more air defense systems to the Urals and strengthen electronic warfare. But this creates a classic dilemma, a lose-lose position. When Russia moves air defense to the Urals, defenses along the front lines or around Moscow weaken. It is not possible to deploy S-400 batteries, Pantsir systems, and radar stations everywhere at once. Russia's total air defense capacity is limited, and Ukraine has been systematically eroding that capacity. These 429 attacks represent a deliberate campaign of attrition, not just against equipment, but against Russia's strategic posture. Each strike forces a choice: protect the front, the capital, or the industrial base. By forcing Russia to spread its limited high-end assets thin, Ukraine is effectively creating the very vulnerabilities it then exploits. In the long term, recovery will be much more difficult. Repairing damage at critical facilities is costly and time-consuming. Procuring spare parts, especially sensitive electronics, is difficult under sanctions. And Ukraine's drone range continues to grow. If it is 1,800 kilometers today, what will it be tomorrow? Serhiy Sternenko's answer is clear. The strike range needs to be increased further. This is a nightmare scenario for Russia, a constantly expanding defense line with insufficient resources to cover it. The repercussions extend beyond Russia's borders. Putin's arms customers, India, Egypt, Algeria, Vietnam, are watching closely. An airspace the S-400 could not protect, drones it failed to detect for 10 hours. These are devastating images for Russia's arms exports. The claim that the S-400 is the world's best air defense system erodes with every failed defense. India, a major S-400 customer, is watching. China is analyzing how cheap, long-range drones are bypassing large air defense networks. Iran is watching as Ukraine's drones prove far more sophisticated than its own Shaheds. If billion-dollar air defense systems can be bypassed by drones costing a few $100,000, the world's militaries will be forced to rethink their procurement strategies. NATO allies are already integrating Ukraine's real-world combat data into their own defense planning. The Ural offensive has redrawn the map of this war. Russia is now under threat 1,800 kilometers deep into its own territory. Putin's deep rear security has been permanently eliminated. The Lutyj's range increases with every version. Its warhead capacity has grown, and its AI-supported navigation system gets smarter with every mission. Ukraine is not just producing one weapon, it is fostering an ecosystem. Under the brave One Defense Innovation Cluster, over 280 companies are developing drones. This ecosystem is gaining speed every day against Russia's centralized, cumbersome defense industry. Putin is falling behind in this race. But there is another aspect to these attacks, perhaps the most destructive in the long run. When you strike a factory, walls are rebuilt and machines are replaced. But when you lose the people who work in that factory, replacing them is far more difficult. The Ural region is home to the engineers, metallurgists, and skilled workers who keep the defense industry running. Now, they work under the threat of drones. An explosive hitting the factory roof destroys not only the production line, but also the sense of security among the people on that line. And when that sense of security collapses, people begin to flee. This is a silent crisis, one that erodes Russia's war production from within. Repairing a factory takes months. Bringing back a fleeing engineer can be impossible. And without mines, factories are just empty buildings.